Most days I wonder, what spell am I under? I'm getting older, better at making amends. Now that the music is gone and the ghosts won't rest. Most nights I'm lonely, messed up and lonely, picking up sparks and alive by the skin of my teeth, scratching the surface to find out what's underneath. I came out here a broken man, and all the way to the center of the world, and I wonder who I will be after Hermannsburg. There's dust in the park and 1,000 dogs bark. There's cars in the yard and a sky so big it could fall down. In the middle of nowhere, and God lives right here in town. It's not always the place, it's sometimes the getting there, but this time it was much further than all the map. And I hope it's easy for me to get back. And I came out here a broken man, and all the way to the center of the world, and I wonder who I will be after Hermannsburg. Most days I wonder, what spell am I under? And I'm getting older, the younger me drags on the chain. The story might change, but the ending's always the same. And I came out here a broken man, and all the way to the center of the world, and I wonder who I will be after Hermannsburg. Yeah, I wonder who I will be after Hermannsburg. There's a feeling around you, like the air is on fire, like there's some kind of evil thing just humming through your words. And I don't know how to save you from the things that you feel, and I don't know how to fix you now, but I'm staying right here, and I'll make you stay, even if only for a while. I'll make you safe, even if just to see you smile. I'll make you safe. safe, even if only for a while. I'll make you safe, even if just to see you smile. I'll make you safe, when every inch seems like a mile. I'll make you safe, whatever it takes to see you smile. I'll make you safe, I'll make you safe, yeah, I'll make you safe.
Shane Nicholson, welcome to The Right Notes.
Thank you.
You played a song from the previous album called Hermannsburg about an experience you had a couple of years ago that seems to have left a mark on you.
I did. A good friend of mine, Warren Williams, a singer-songwriter, who's from the town of Hermannsburg originally, he invited me out there to his hometown because he wanted to show me around, and I'd been living in the studio for about 12 months and working pretty crazy right after my divorce, you know, and I just kind of threw myself into recording and working, and I think he saw that I needed a break, so he took me out to Hermannsburg, and I didn't take an instrument. It was supposed to be a week of no music, but there's something special about the place, and certainly seeing it through his eyes with him there. It's like, you know, the ultimate tour guide, you know, and took me to a lot of special places and told me a lot of special stories about the place, and I could see him be affected by the place, when he touched the water and put his feet in the soil, you know, I could see him physically be affected by it. And it was quite an enlightening experience. And then, you know, I ended up sitting down outside the old church and started writing all these songs. And that wasn't the plan originally. It was a non-music week, you know, but then all these songs came, and the whole Hell Breaks Loose record was born out of that 10 days there, you know. And I mean, ironically, I wrote that song, Hell Breaks Loose, sitting on the steps of a church. But it was really Warren taking me there, and I think that sense of removal or perspective on your life, you know, or your bubble of your existence, you know, when you get to see it from that far away, and it really does feel like the centre of the world out there. It's pretty removed, and I love it. I've been back, and I intend to keep going back, you know.
And the song still has an effect on you, and you're still talking with him about putting it in language. Yeah,
well, we've performed it a few times, and he started translating some of it into language live, and we came up with an idea of actually re-recording it, doing a new version with a whole bunch of verses that are translated into language. And no, I would really personally love to learn some of the lines in language and do that myself. And we've been back and played a concert out there, him and I together, and that song has just kind of become a little unofficial anthem around Hermannsburg, and the youth four-wheel drive will drive around town blasting it out of the speakers. And it's just a beautiful kind of a thing that they've just taken me in so warmly out there. It's kind of, you feel like you're going to visit family or relatives, yeah. You know. It's a beautiful place, and they're beautiful people.
Did that experience still have an effect on your most recent album, Love and Blood? Did the experience of being there carry on into the next songwriting?
I think so. I think it obviously made me a little more inward looking in it, but in a different way than I had been previously. I think that whole experience in Hermannsburg and how it informed Hell Breaks Loose was that I was, I think, more not so self-critical, but maybe more self-aware than I had been before, and those songs were a bit more vulnerable than I had written before, and that certainly carried through. But it's more the feeling of what I experienced out there as far as being isolated, that's what really informed this record. So I created the same situation again by isolating myself, and I went and found a house on the Hawkesbury River that was only accessible by boat, so nobody could get there. There was no mobile service, there was no internet or anything, so I had to get on a boat and go down the river and kind of isolate myself. And I went there about 3 or 4 times to write this record. And it was just that sense of removal that I had in Hermannsburg that I knew I now craved, you know. And it's the only way I think that's been coming since I had children. You know, before I had children, I used to write songs on the road and in hotel rooms and on aeroplanes. But then you start touring with children and that doesn't happen anymore. And then you can't really write songs at home because there's so much else going on. And so over the years, with each successive record, I've started to find that isolating myself just for that period of time is the only way I can be self-absorbed and selfish enough to actually write a record, you know.
There does seem to be more tipping over, or tipping between positivity and sort of self-absorption and sort of being pretty down on yourself on this album.
Yeah.
When you're alone writing, isolated like that, do you find yourself going from one extreme to the other?
Well, I do find myself looking so inward, and that's kind of what I want, certainly in these last few records, because there's no outside stimulus, and I end up sitting there writing about everything I'm ruminating on, and that's kind of what I did want. I wanted these records, certainly with Hell Breaks Loose, I made a concerted effort to be a little more direct in what I was saying, less shrouded in metaphor, be a bit more vulnerable. And yes, that does mean being down on yourself sometimes and seeming to be very inward looking, but that's kind of what I wanted to do, is to go that next step and actually put yourself out there on the line and show that vulnerability, you know, and that learning process. And I think I knew, like everyone, knew more when I was 18 than I know now, you know, and I'm learning that what I'm learning now is that I'm still learning and I don't know half of what I ever thought I did. And I think that's what I find interesting to write about. Certainly my children inform that, you know, and I think there's just a change in perspective in the last maybe 10 years of my life, and that's what I wanted to kind of get through, certainly on this record and the last one, and by isolating myself it seems to be the only way I can make that happen.
You do concede though that people can help you, that you can draw something from other people, which wasn't always clear.
That's true, and I mean I've learnt that too more as time goes on. Certainly recently, you know, my girlfriend has had a huge impact on this record in that I've started looking at the same situations in a slightly different way, and there's a couple of songs that specifically, you know, she's influenced, you know, on that record, and it's just sometimes it takes an outside person to hold up a mirror and make you kind of reassess your take on that situation, whatever it, you know, may be. And I've enjoyed that, and I think I get that this record can be kind of insular in a way and kind of almost morose in parts, but it's actually, from my point of view, probably a lot more positive overall than any record I've made for quite a while too. Maybe other people can't see that positivity in it, but I see a positivity in it, or certainly an acceptance of things I can't change and a willingness to move past that. You know?
That song like Safe, I think, is saying something positive.
Yeah, that's the closest thing I've ever written to a love song in my life. And I mean, I can't write love songs. I never have. I've never tried to. I find them really difficult to write, and really difficult, well, not so difficult to write, really difficult to like, you know, once I've written them. So I just avoid it. But that was the closest thing that came to a love song. And the reason I think that happened is because I didn't write it for the record. I wrote that as a Christmas present for her. She told me when I first met her that she'd never dated a musician, so she'd never had a song written about her. And I thought, well, every girl should have a song written about them at least once. So I wrote that as a Christmas present. But I just liked it too much, and I thought it was unfair of her to keep it. So I recorded it, put it on the record.
You do have mixed feelings about Christmas, though. I mean, you know,
Yes.
you wrote a song for her as a Christmas present, but I understand you have some warring issues with a neighbour over Christmas.
Well, I have a neighbour that really enjoys Christmas carols and playing them quite loudly, and I'm not a lover of Christmas carols. I'd go so far as to say I can't stand them. It's just, they're just not my thing. And we have this little friendly ongoing war where they'll start playing Christmas carols, and every time they do, now they've come to expect, they're going to hear my amplifier cranked up and I'll be playing Black Sabbath or Slayer or some kind of really heavy song, and then they'll try and battle it. But, I've got a bit more firepower in my studio, so I usually win out. But it's all in good fun.
You played Sabbath, Slayer, metal in your youth. Does it ever come out in you, apart from when you're trying to beat down the Christmas carols next door?
It's funny, it's never really come out in my work as such, but I still play it all the time. And I think people would be surprised to know that through the entire making of Hell Breaks Loose, I was driving or riding my motorbike up and down the freeway every day to Sydney to come and work and record, and then I would go back home at night. And all of those trips I spent listening, going back over all the black metal I used to listen to as a kid, Dark Throne and Mayhem and, all these bands that I was listening to that on the way to the studio every day to make Hell Breaks Loose. And I don't see a real crazy difference between the two. I clearly see that I'm not playing black metal, but that was all part of my life, and I still listen to it all the time. I still listen to metal's a massive big part of my life, and my kids listen to a lot of it now. Certainly not so much the black metal, but they love, Slayer and Megadeth, and they'll ask for songs in the car, and I kind of feel like that's good parenting.
Wiggles, Slayer, what's the difference?
But that's
really?
what they do, one will ask for Eminem, and then one will ask for a Megadeth song, and then they'll ask for Gangnam Style or something, and it's all over the place. But that's kind of how I was as a child. I had no idea that there were different genres of music. I didn't know that they were called different things. My parents both loved music, so I was exposed to a lot of different music, but I didn't know that there was country artists and there was rock artists, and I just thought everyone, it didn't matter. So I love that my kids are growing up the same way.
Do you think of yourself as a country artist, or do you think of yourself as an Americana artist, or just a singer-songwriter?
I think of myself as bits and pieces of both those things, but folk and rock and all the things that I've done in the past. I don't think I ever would actually sit down and would ever think about it and define myself as a particular artist. I think of myself as a songwriter more than anything, and I write songs and dress them up and release them. I love country, I love Americana, but like I said, I love listening to a lot of other stuff. I'm not more influenced by one thing than the other. I think I'm just very lucky. I consider myself very fortunate that the music I've wanted to make has been accepted by the country industry or the Americana faction of the industry, and then also by some of the mainstream parts of the industry, and over the years some mainstream outlets and radio, that kind of thing. And so people often say it's about walking that line between the two things and keeping one foot in each camp. Well, it's not to me. It's just make the record and hope for the best. Sometimes it doesn't always land both sides of the fence, but I've just been fortunate, I guess, over the years that what I do is country enough for the country people, and it's got the others. I don't know. I just don't know how it works, but I don't really want to know, because I think by analysing it, I'll probably screw it up.
You have another career, which I don't understand how you fit all this in with your own work, but you're a very successful and very in-demand producer. What is it that you get out of producing other than a reasonable income? Or at least an income.
An income, yeah. Well, I think I couldn't live doing just my own music, right? And I did for a long time, but the best thing I ever did for my own music was start making other people's music as well. Because basically I love the point of creation. That's the reason I make music. I do like performing, I do like making records. I like all aspects of being an artist, but the one I enjoy the most is that point of creation in the studio, when something becomes real. It became from an idea and it goes to something that didn't exist that morning, and that to me that's why I love doing the most. So by producing, I get to do that daily through other people. With myself, I get to do it once every 2 years or something, and that's just not enough for me. I need to be in the studio all the time. That's my safe place. It's kind of where I like to be. That's where I feel the most comfortable, and I've always had my own studio, so it's been something that's accessible to me. I can just go and work when I like, and I don't think I could ever just make my own music anymore. I've enjoyed so much working with other people, and I remember what it was like making my first record. So when someone comes to me and they're making their first record, I feel like I have an advantage in that situation where I can I know exactly how they're feeling. I know the self-doubt and the fear and all of that stuff, and that leads me to kind of say that production is 10% music and 90% psychology. That's what it is. That's what the job of the role of a producer is.
Then I guess as a final question, is there any chance if one of these young artists came to you and said, Shane, I've got all these great songs, but I'd also like to record a Christmas carol, would you draw the line?
Well, quite possibly I would. I have my very good friend Matt Fell, who produced my last two records actually. He just did his first Christmas carol session 2 weeks ago, and he was nervous because he, like me, is quite reluctant. Although he told me after it that it wasn't nearly as bad as he expected. He came out unscathed. He's not, it wasn't a huge train wreck, and he said it was fine, and he got paid for it, so he was happy. I don't know if I could do it. I'm not sure. I mean, no, I don't think so.
Will you produce a death metal album if someone
Absolutely, yeah.
in a heartbeat?
Yeah, I don't know if I would know how to. I mean, that's a very different kettle of fish, but I kind of love producing anything. It's just so much fun, and obviously music comes to you people come to you for a reason, judging you on the work you've done before for other people or your own records, and so it becomes a certain kind of clientele that comes to this producer or that producer. I don't really get a lot of pop acts coming to me, or that kind of thing. So a lot of that work is done for me before it gets to me. But the artists that I love are coming to me in the first place. I don't think anyone would ask me to make a Christmas song. Certainly not after seeing this interview.
But after hearing what you listened to on the way to and from recording, I think death metal might be on the cards. So,
it might be in the future, yeah.
Someone watching this, they're about to call you.
Okay, call me.
Thanks for your time, Shane.
Thank you.